Hey guys, this is Justin from thecarflip.com, and we are doing an Ask Me Anything question currently. Today's question comes from Joe, who lives, I believe in his email I was reading, about 40 miles or 40 minutes south of Chicago. Actually, just one of my friends was just visiting his family in Chicago, and if you're watching this video right now, which is in March, he said it was really cold. So, and that's compared to North Carolina, which we've been really warm and cold, and warm and cold. We've been back and forth, but he was just talking about how cold it was. So, Joe, I'm assuming you wore your jacket to work today. But the question was, and it was kind of, there was multiple questions in one. The main question, which I think will apply to pretty much anyone that's watching this video at some point in their life. If you're a more experienced flipper, maybe this was you back in the day. If you're watching this video and you're curious about flipping, or you've thought about it and you've just not pulled the trigger yet, this is probably you right now, because where he's at, he's contemplating flipping. He thinks it could be a big part of his income going forward, but he's not bought a car yet, and he's a little nervous, like all of us were at some point. I mean, I was the same way. The first time I went to buy a car, my dad took me to an auction. I had plans of buying 2 cars that day, and I was so scared I didn't even bid on one. Like I was terrified that I was going to mess up and lose all my money. And that's kind of where Joe's at, and he's looking on Craigslist, and he's afraid that he's not going to do the right thing, and that he would potentially lose money on the deal. Another question that he had, kind of in conjunction with that, he's trying to get a game plan on the best way to purchase that first car. And he's noticed that a few hours south of him, that cars seem to be a little cheaper, which would make sense. You're in a pretty large metro area. I'm sure there's a bigger demand where you are because there's a lot more people. So that would logically make sense. At the same time, you've got to factor in your time. He actually asked another question about time. You know, would it be better to detail his own cars or to sub that out? You know, would he make more money saving the time and then reinvesting in looking for cars? And that all depends on really on the scale. If you've got 5 cars, 10 cars at a time, that might make sense. If you're just doing one, it probably is going to make more sense for you to do it yourself to begin with, especially if you know what you're doing. He said he's got a polisher that he's used before. If you know how to do it, that's just more profit. So if you sub that out, you're going to pay someone, you know, hundreds of dollars to take care of all of that detail work. If they're doing it, you know, if they're shampooing, if they're buffing, if they're doing all of that, you know, it's going to cost you, and that's money you can put in your pocket. So if you've got, you know, 1 hour in the afternoon, you got 2 hours the next day, you got 3 hours on Saturday, I mean, you're good. If you've got that free time, that's great. The way that I look at that is, what would I have been doing with that time otherwise? Like, would I have been watching, you know, whatever, my favorite TV show? Would I have been watching basketball? Would I have been, I don't know, you fill in the blank with whatever you would have been doing. And with that activity that I would have been doing, would I pay, you know, $100 to watch whatever my favorite TV show is? Probably no. Now, that being said, if your income is to a point where it doesn't matter, and sure, I'll pay $100 to watch a TV show, have at it. I mean, you know, but most of us aren't in that boat. And so for me, I like to keep as much stuff as I can in-house. And actually, when I opened my dealership, I did pretty much everything right off the bat. I mean, I was the detailer, I was the office manager, I was the salesman, I was the mechanic, and eventually I basically hired myself out of certain roles. I hired a full-time mechanic, which took over all the mechanical side. I still do a little bit here and there, but he's way more knowledgeable than I am, and so I leave that with him. Now I've got a part-time detail guy, actually 2 part-time guys, one that does during the week and one that comes in on Saturdays. So that has freed up a ton of my time from the detail side. And then the guy that does Saturdays, he details, and he's a really nice, he's an awesome guy. So he's very personable, and he also runs my Saturdays, so that's freed up my Saturdays now. So I think the best strategy with that, you know, he mentioned that, you know, he might even one day want to open a dealership. The best way to go about that, and from my point of view, is to hire other people to replace certain aspects of what you do. So maybe you would hire the detailing down the road, you would hire the mechanic stuff out down the road. And the mechanic side of it's a little different, because from the get-go you might have to do some of the mechanic stuff yourself to begin with, and then you also probably will have to send some of that out, because it's going to be beyond what you know. There's still several things that I do on a daily basis, or that I encounter, that are way beyond my expertise, and I send it over to my mechanic. So that's how I would look at that part of it. Now, the other question of, should you go and look, you know, 3 hours south for good deals? I don't think that's a bad idea, but I also wouldn't ignore the deals right in your backyard, because with more people, that definitely creates more of a demand for cars, but at the same time, that also creates more vehicles that are going to be available, I guess, to buy. I found for me, being closer to a metro area. Now I'm close. I'm pretty much in Raleigh, North Carolina, which is nowhere near the size and scope of Chicago. But I found that it's a lot easier for me to find deals and to buy deals here, even though I probably could find cheaper deals out in the country. But because they're right here, I can be there in 5 minutes. I can be there in 20 minutes, and that makes a big difference when it comes to speed. Because if a really good deal pops up, someone's gonna beat you to it if you're driving 3 hours. Now that's not always the case, but for me, I really have enjoyed being more in a metro area. A couple of years ago, I was more out in a country setting. I was 40 minutes from Charlotte, North Carolina, which is a little bigger than Raleigh, but I struggled with that distance thing because, number one, you have to find somebody to drive with you unless you have a trailer. So my wife is kind of my, I guess, my sidekick when we go out. We got the whole family with us, and so we're all going on this adventure to pick up this car, and it'd be difficult for me to be driving 3 hours to every single car that we went to buy. So an hour is not that difficult to convince my wife to go on. I've promised her snacks along the way. We usually go out to eat as part of it. So we kind of make it, an experience. And, most of the time I get there and the car is fine. But it would be really dissettling for you to take somebody with you, to drive 3 hours, for the car to be a piece of junk. Which, you can offset some of that a little bit with the question that you ask ahead of time before you go and look at a car. Some people like to look at a car before they ask anyone any questions. To me, that's dumb. So I like to know things up front, so that'll save you some of that hassle. But for me, sure, look 3 hours out, but also be looking in your backyard. Be looking at Craigslist Chicago. Be looking at Craigslist, and I'm sure it's broken into different increments there in that area, but be looking close by. Be looking at your Facebook Marketplace app on your phone. That's going to set a perimeter around you, to which it'll find deals. So definitely, I would say both and. It's not either or, it's both and. So take a look at both there. There was one other question, and I'm trying to remember it. I have got my email. I look at the email, then I come back to the video, and I'm blanking out on the other question. So yeah, this is definitely not scripted. So I'm gonna double check the other question, and I will respond to that part in the email. But if you guys have any other questions, I probably need to have like a sticky note up here so I can remember everything. But if you guys have any other questions, I would be more than glad to help you guys out. Actually, I just remember the other question. See, it's definitely not scripted. He was asking when the car flip course is going to be coming out, and you think I would remember that. But actually, it's probably going to be after tax time, and we're in 2017 right now, if you're watching this somewhere off in the distance. So tax time right now is a huge time for us as a dealership, because I own a dealership. So we're going to get through that. I've been filming some. We had a mishap with one of our cameras, so we lost a lot of stuff. So we've replaced the camera, and we are currently working towards that after tax time. There's not a set date yet, but if you're a member of the Car Flip email list, which you would have signed up at thecarflip.com, top of the page is a little banner. You put your email in. There's also one that pops up in the bottom. But if you're a member there, you'll get an email before anybody else, and we'll be updating you guys and letting you know what's up with that. So I hope that helps, man. If you have any other questions or a follow-up to this, or if I missed something, feel free to send me an email, and I'll help you any way I can. Have a good one.